He is one of the voices that you hear and enjoy quite a bit on the highly popular podcast Around the NFL. He is Gregg Rosenthal here on the Rich Eisen Show. How are you, sir?
I'm good. We plugging back into the NFL? The time?
There's every day for me, sir. There's not a day where I'm not plugged in. It's the greatest. And I can't wait to talk all 32 and every single aspect of this season. I just find is going to be that much more intense. Certainly, since the MVP of the league is still an open question. What do you make of Rodgers' latest comments about working on self and the voice in the room that's the loudest isn't sometimes the most knowledgeable and things of that nature? What do you make of that?
Well, I think he's saying he's the most knowledgeable, possibly, to start. But I think he's been on this journey a while. I think of this podcast he did years ago. I really recommend people go check it out. It was with Pete Holmes, the comedian.
Mm-hmm.
And he must have done it 5 or 6 years ago when he was spending summers out here in L.A. And, look, he thinks different than most NFL quarterbacks. He has been trying to master his own mind and relax, in his words, as well as possible. And so I think it's just that journey that he's been on, and I like it. Like, I think back to the old 60s and 70s, like books about the NFL by Dr. Z and stuff like that, and the characters like Namath and everything that they had at quarterback, and the crazy things that they would say to the media all the time. And it's like, I always wondered, like, what if quarterbacks were like that now? And I feel like Aaron Rodgers is that guy. So I don't really put too much into it other than he's taking some me time. He's trying to get ready for the season.
Well, then the question is what does the season look like? I mean, at some point, rubber's got to meet road. You know where all I guess pressure points lead to. Beginning of training camp, first preseason game, second preseason game, then obviously the week to 10 days before the opener against the Saints. How do you see this all playing out? What are you guys talking about on your pod and think how it all is going to work out, Gregg Rosenthal?
I've thought the soft deadline, throughout was the training camp. And then the real deadline is the preseason. And you mentioned it, like right before the season is closer to the hard deadline. I don't think there's anything Jordan Love is going to do that's going to change the equation. Like, it doesn't matter how well he plays. I still think it's a money thing. The fact that the Packers were trying to negotiate at the beginning of the offseason, and that essentially Rodgers got extra mad when he wasn't happy with the terms that they were trying to negotiate, tells me it's still just a negotiation. And that as upset as he is, I listen to the voice of our colleague James Jones or Rodgers' former teammate John Kuhn. If they think it can be settled, I tend to think it'll be settled, and I do think he's not playing anywhere else. I would be absolutely stunned if they did anything but ice him for a year or come to a new agreement. And to me, that new agreement, as annoying as it's going to be to talk about for the next 2 months, is probably most likely the week or 2 weeks before the season. That's how these things usually go.
Well, the new agreement has got to have terms and dollars that keeps him, the starter, and Jordan Love from getting on the field for any sort of significant evaluation to pick up a fifth-year option. And I agree with you. I don't think he goes somewhere else this year either, because the idea to trade him to a spot for draft choices that are only going to get worse for the Packers, because Rodgers will undoubtedly make those draft choices get further and further away from first overall based on his play, makes no sense, as opposed to letting the team that wants Rodgers now go the season without him and have a fixed, terrible draft spot for them. I guess a higher draft choice for the Packers. So I don't see that, but they would have to have Rodgers understand that he would have to stare down the barrel of not playing, and I think that might actually harden his stance, to be very honest with you. Gregg?
Yeah, I do too, and that's why I haven't, given up on the idea that he will sit out this season, that they will, go into the season at the very least with him on ice. But if they just guaranteed money 1 extra year, I tend to think if it's enough money, that is a happy medium. And this thing didn't go nuclear until they essentially went back to him after he had just done the MVP season and tried to move money around in his contract in a way that didn't give him any extra money in an additional year. And that was the point where, as much as, everyone's sick of hearing Aaron Rodgers' needs and talking about that. It's like, yeah, that's the moment that you should be furious if you're Aaron Rodgers. Like, even after the MVP, they were essentially, entering a negotiation with a lowball offer that didn't make any sense. But the fact that they started it that way makes me think that in the end, they're willing to make this happen, and they're willing to give him the money, and they are not willing to go watch him succeed with another organization, because to me that's by far the worst outcome for Mark Murphy and everyone. That's how you get fired.
So then I guess last one for you on this, Greg, before we move along and talk about other NFL subjects. Then so then based on that supposition, and I think it's wise, and I think you've come up with something that does appear to be fixable or workable, that does not touch the world of grocery shopping, right? Because, right, and demanding a say in grocery shopping or getting rid of the main grocery shopper for the Packers and Brian Gutekunst. But I guess that's the end of my wind-up. Now here's the pitch. For Rodgers to accept that means the Packers would have to put it on the table. Why wouldn't they have put it on the table already? Have they put that on the table, and Rodgers is now doing this whole off-season making them wait and stewing? Because if they were willing to do that before, like, why wouldn't they have done that already, Greg?
It's a great question. There is a chance here that they've got their heels dug in, but I just look at all these negotiations like over the course of time, and as much as we think Aaron Rodgers is special in quarterbacks, I've heard this before, like think they're special in these negotiations. They're still just players, and ownership, or in this case, Mark Murphy, their president, and the GM, treat them as players, and it doesn't happen until the last second. Like I think of the Javon Walker negotiation way back in the day, which went on forever, and they don't make their final move until you get closer to the deadline, and so. I think they'll do it. I don't think there's any way that they want to go into this season with Jordan Love.
The Javon Walker one where Favre chimed in the middle of it, right? And told Walker to get into camp. Remember that?
I love it. I love how we're just history repeating ourselves once again. And Rodgers knows it, and I think he'd love to play for another organization. Maybe he can get a promise, too, that it'll only be 2 years. That's essentially what Tom Brady did at the end of his Patriots career, is he did it in such a way that he knew the year that he would have freedom. And if they can do that with Rodgers, maybe both sides are happy.
Gregg Rosenthal here on the Rich Eisen Show from the Around the NFL podcast, which you can get where all podcasts are acquired. What's the story in the NFL we're not paying enough attention to, Greg, do you think?
I'd start with Justin Herbert. I don't know why. Maybe it's like his demeanor. Maybe it's the fact that he played for a pretty lousy Chargers team. But you would think a guy that I think arguably had the greatest rookie season by a quarterback in NFL history, and you could argue Roethlisberger. You could maybe argue RG3. There's a few other ones over time that are in the mix. Like, you would think he would have a little more hype because he did so many of the hard things last year in terms of plays under pressure, like difficult throws. It was the easy things that he wasn't as good, and that's what you can improve on from year one to year two. Like, to me, he's the most fascinating player to watch, at least for me, because to me, he could be right there alongside Mahomes as like the two great quarterbacks moving forward. And yet I don't get the sense, like, nationally there's a lot of like Herbert excitement.
Well, it's because they're in Southern California, Greg, right? And the Rams are the ones who made the big maneuver for a quarterback this offseason, firing the first shot, and the Stafford with the Rams has certainly got the Rams, I think, rightfully filled with bandwagon jumpers. And, the Chargers are always the Chargers. No matter how terrific their quarterback may be, there's always something that happens in the last 90 seconds or 9 seconds of a game that is the most Chargers thing possible. Whether it's, Melvin Gordon fumbling 3 different times on the goal line in Tennessee a couple years ago, or what happened in the first week, first home game this year of Tyrod Taylor getting the shot to the lung, and then Herbert comes in, which is kind of like, I guess, their Mo Lewis moment potentially, based on how much you're talking about Herbert, and I think rightfully so. I'm hearing that they love the new coach. They love Staley, and that it's a totally different atmosphere within that building, which is another reason why I like the Chargers this year. Greg?
Yeah, I love Staley too. Everything I hear about him, and he's got the defensive talent there. As long as they don't get hurt, this is the time of year. This is Chargers hype season, and I've fallen for it before.
Huh.
I was the biggest Phillip Rivers fan, and they pretty much wasted Phillip Rivers' career by not having an offensive line and injuries and bad luck and defense. But their defense should be great. Their offensive line and what they've done to rebuild it on paper, we've said this before, but it's never looked this good. Looks so much better, and yeah, I do think, like, just in terms of watchability, not enough people got eyes on Herbert, and the stuff he did to me was like Andrew Luck as a rookie, but better, or Russell Wilson as a rookie, but better, and that's like what gets me going, is watching young talent like that.
Gregg Rosenthal here on the Rich Eisen Show. What do you think the Patriots season looks like?
Ooh, I think more than likely Mac Jones plays sooner than later. I think they're giving Cam Newton every chance that he possibly has. But I don't necessarily think you look at all these pickups that they had in free agency and just like slot them in for 10 or 11 wins. Like, it is a passing league, and it's great to have two tight ends, and it's great they're going to play some hurry-up offense. I think at the end of the year, you saw them play very fast a year ago with Cam Newton. I think that's the type of offense they want to run, whether it's Newton or Mac Jones. And they added a ton of talent on defense, and Dante Hightower returning is massive. Yet, I don't see them as like a top 5 roster. I don't see them as a top 10 roster. You're counting on the coaching to make up for a huge difference. And I think we saw last year what coaching can do. I think they were a 3 or 4 win roster that won 7 times, and they were maybe the least talented offense in the entire league. And I don't think just a bunch of free agent moves are kind of like solve that. The Bills, to me, are still a pretty heavy favorite over them in the East.
What do you think Justin Fields starts? We had Matt Nagy on the week after the draft, and he's like, I was there when I watched Mahomes sit for the entire first season, with the exception of the final regular season game, because there was Alex Smith, and that's the plan that we have for Justin Fields sitting behind Andy Dalton. I even pushed back to basically say, I don't know if you're going to have the latitude to be able to pull that one off. And he kind of even admitted that he might not. But that's still the plan as we're sitting here the Tuesday after July 4th. What do you think about Justin Fields, Gregg Rosenthal, starting?
Yeah, I remember breaking down those quotes from your show on our show. So
terrific.
You were helping us out. And I remember, like, he added the caveat, essentially, things can change. Like, that's our plan, but things can change. And one of those things that can change is Justin Fields looking much better than Andy Dalton in the preseason and training camp, and there's a lot of reasons to believe that could happen. You look at the Week 1 matchup against the Rams, on Sunday Night Football. Just as a football fan, I'm hoping Fields gets out there for that game, but it wouldn't shock me if they give Dalton the obligatory 1 or 2 weeks to start, and especially that first week is a tough ask, and then we see Fields in there because, yes, Pat Mahomes sat for a year. They were scoring 30 points a game in Kansas City. They were one of the highest scoring offenses in the league. There's no way that Andy Dalton Bears are going to be one of the highest scoring offenses in the league.
What about Trey Lance? What do you think his rookie season looks like? Do you see maybe him out wide, maybe next to Jimmy G, or he's just way too valuable a future quarterback in this league to throw him out there like that, and he'll just be a clipboard holder for as long as they want to stick with Jimmy G? What do you think?
Most of these guys, I feel like it's up to them. Like, it's Trey Lance's job essentially to win in camp. They spend this off season evaluating and teaching, and you know how it is. That it's go time once you're about 3 or 4 days into camp. And if he is as good as they think he is, I think he'll be starting as soon as Week 1. I mean, if he is a little more accurate than he was in college, the amount of talent on that roster is breathtaking. To me, they are one of the favorites. I'm kind of surprised when I saw right now the Rams are number 2 NFC favorite if you're just kind of going by what's in the desert and everything. And to me, I don't see the Rams as being particularly better this year. There's a lot of reasons to think they'll decline outside of the quarterback position. And the 49ers and the Seahawks in that division is just so loaded. We've seen Kyle Shanahan with a similar type of quarterback in RG3 light up the league as a rookie, and I don't really see any reason why he would be afraid to play Trey Lance as long as he has a good auger.
All right, I'll push back on the Rams thing, Greg, because there was ever since that that Monday nighter where the Rams and the Chiefs killed defense, right? Supposedly. And then the Super Bowl was played, and there was only one touchdown scored. The Rams' offense hasn't been the same since then, and they seem to have been missing a gear. And no matter how beautiful a ball that Jared Goff can throw, it just seemed that there was just a certain gear that was missing on that, and it might have been Gurley not being as healthy as we were all hoping for. It could have been that. But the fact that they do have a running game that Stafford's never had, the receiving core is you could say the same, if not maybe better. Why don't you like the Rams to improve this year?
Because I don't think the defense is going to stay at the same level. Generally, defenses that good don't stay at the same level. It's much easier to have a great, consistent offense. So that's one area. You think about who they lost in the secondary. They're going to miss Josh Johnson. They're going to miss Troy Hill. They're going to miss 3 defensive coaches. It wasn't just Brandon Staley. It was Aubrey Pleasant. It was the coordinator who's now in Green Bay, Barry. And you look at their roster, and it's an ultimate stars and scrubs roster. How bad can your defense be when you have Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey? It's not like they're going to be bad, but there are a lot of positions where they're average or below average, and they are counting on their ability to develop. And they've done a good job with that over the years, but they have lost so much in terms of their coaching staff. They didn't add anything to their offensive line. I just think you're really counting on a big upgrade from going from Goff, who at times was a good quarterback and certainly was not last year, to a top 10 type of quarterback in Stafford, but not a top 5 guy, not one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And you're in a loaded division. And I think if you just look at the roster, 1 through 10, the Rams stack up against anyone, but they're not as thin. They've been very lucky in terms of injuries over the last couple of years. One of the least injured teams in the league. And I just feel like there's a lot of reasons to believe they're going to battle to win 10 or 11 games. That NFC West is going to just be a bloodbath.
Gregg Rosenthal here on the Rich Eisen Show, and we're still waiting to see fifth-year options turn into monster contracts for Lamar and Baker. Why haven't we seen them yet? Do we get them right before the season? What do you think, Greg?
Yeah, this is the time of year. I think it's going to happen with Lamar Jackson just because of the way that he spoke about it. He sounded so confident, and I would anticipate it's probably going to happen with Baker Mayfield. When the players aren't stressing publicly and the agents aren't stressing at all, I don't think the fans should, because I think both players would be agitating if they weren't expecting to sign. Lamar, I think will happen before camp. Whether Baker happens before camp or midway through, it sounds like it's happening. I thought it might be an interesting strategy after watching Jared Goff and Carson Wentz get those 2 contracts early and then regret it, to just make Baker play another 6-7 games with Kevin Stefanski. But it doesn't sound like the Browns are that interested in doing that.
I don't know if the Browns can be so special this year, Greg. Are you on that hype bandwagon? What do you got for me on the Browns?
I am. We sort of live and die with the Browns with Mark Sessler on our podcast. He's a longtime fan. I just worry it's the NFL. It's yes, everything makes sense. They have a top 5 roster, but we've seen teams like that go. It wouldn't shock me if they go 10-7. A couple things go wrong for them. They should be right there with every team in the AFC. And I love the fact that they're built on an offensive line that just is back and it's loaded. They have so many different ways that they can beat you with offense. They have the best backfield in the league. They have one of the best tight end groups in the league. And now with OBJ back, I love the receivers too. Stefanski has to kind of prove that he's not Matt Nagy, though, that he's not first year coach of the year type of guy, and he keeps the magic going, because defenses will definitely adjust in that division.
Well, maybe it's just that Baker is a little bit better than Trubisky. Maybe. What do you think about that? If you want to make an analogy here, maybe Stefanski's got the better quarterback of the 2.
Yeah, I think he does. I mean, I know he does. He's got the better quarterback. The question is is Baker going to be the guy from the last 6 games of the year? I was a little surprised this offseason. It still feels like the question is Baker a difference maker? It's watch those playoff games. I mean, I know they lost to the Chiefs, but some of the throws he made in those games were outrageous. I mean, he played fantastic the last 7 or 8 games. Can he do that for a full 16-game season? There's a pretty good reason to believe he will. And Stefanski, I just love his demeanor. I love the way that he play calls. He definitely feels a little bit like an AFC answer to Kyle Shanahan, and beautiful for Browns fans who, among many things, are annoyed that Kyle Shanahan got away from it.
I mean, how do you handle that? Sessler's a Browns fan. Hanzus is a Jet fan. I mean, is Hanzus doing the usual, which is, just what we're all doing, which is like, what else? We're back here again where we're hoping the coach and the quarterback's right, And like I said earlier, I like the coach. The quarterback concerns me that they either drafted a generationally talented guy finally, or they drafted Stifler and his mother. I'm genuinely concerned about that, Greg. There's no gray area, I don't think. Honestly,
I love that. I hate to admit, I grew up a Patriots fan too. I mean, there is a part of me that is curious to see if this all just blows up in the Jetsian style possible. But man, you got to love the coach and you got to love the talent on offense. Like if Joe Douglas hadn't fixed that offensive line by now, after the investments that he's made, I'd be surprised. And I love the weapons around. I love the weapons around the quarterback. I really think that right now the Jets are set up where like 6-7 wins. You got to be happy with that, Rich, right? I mean, there shouldn't be too high expectations. As long as the offense and the quarterback are good, I'd worry about the wins later.
There's now the 17th game out there, Greg. So, maybe expectations can go a little higher. But I do like the coach, and I hope that they did get it right with the quarterback. And I do agree that Joe Douglas is building from the inside out as opposed to what was going on in the administrations before, despite my just pure man love for Jamal Adams. I do like the way that they're building the team. Thanks for the call, Greg. Let's do this closer to the beginning of the season. And like as always, I'm more than happy to be the home or the away team for the home and home on your pod.
Absolutely. Yeah, we got to get you on soon.
Anytime.
Look forward to talking to you again, Rich.
Right back at you, Greg. That's Gregg Rosenthal Around the NFL podcast. It is highly entertaining, highly popular, and it's where all podcasts are acquired. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.